know, it takes a village to make a new industry get off the ground, and many different players across the ecosystem need to come together and collaborate, cooperate in order to for advanced air mobility to become a reality in our cities. We'll move then into a very interesting panel about regulations, another very key element. You know, until we don't have regulations in place, technology alone will not be enough for us to be able to fly and move around our cities with this vehicle, on these vehicles. And finally, we'll conclude with the last panel in the early afternoon, where we'll talk about, you know, exploring broader perspectives and developing new partnerships in this sector. So before we get started, we'll put on a very short video to introduce this session, and then I'll come back on stage to introduce our first keynote speaker. It was exciting to see it live. It's exciting also to see it recorded. I think I'll keep on watching this video today and this weekend. But without further ado, let me introduce our first keynote speaker. So Colin Shunk from Roland Berger. Colin, please come on stage. So Colin will give us a bit of an overview of the advanced air mobility market, and we'll share the view, the Roland Berger view on growth projections for the advanced air mobility sector. Thank you, Colin.
Yeah, thank you very much for, first of all, the invitation. It's great to be in Italy and in Rome. The last time I was here goes back roughly 10 years ago, when I was visiting Rome, actually. And it was also during summer. We had blue sky. It was hot, similar to today, actually. And my presentation is all about the perfect storm. So it's a little contradictory about the current weather conditions that we're having here. But that's what's currently, at least, we see in the industry. And so for the next 5 to 8 minutes, I will be most likely the most unwanted person in this room. Providing some insights on the status of the industry, of the AAM industry. So we experienced some very golden times. That's not long ago. It was 12 to 18 months, where many of the well-known startups out there, like Joby, Lilium, Vertical, and so on, went public at the stock exchange via a special purpose acquisition. But then only roughly already 6 months later, we are entering into a crisis mode. That's mainly going back to the overall macroeconomic situation, which obviously also affects the overall AAM industry. A very positive sign, though, is that many other areas or segments are currently hit harder than the AAM industry. For example, tech, fintech industry is hit harder at the moment than AAM. AAM is still able to, in part, raise substantial funding. For example, in January, it was Wisk with 450 million. This year, Over Air in June. And we see that many smaller funding rounds are still happening. However, we also see that some companies are already leaving the market. We have some well-known companies who left the market just recently. And we have many smaller unknown players and projects that are stopped, or startups that are actually leaving the market because funding runs out. So we are currently experiencing a little, let's say, downturn, and this is most likely, or will most likely continue in the next few months, or even 1 or 2 years. And so it's important to know what to focus on in order to still reach our projected market That's based on the Roland Berger market potential forecast, and we expect that AAM will reach the market potential of 90 billion by 2050, with roughly 160,000 aircraft in the air by that year. And in order to do so, and to reach this, become a mass transportation mode, I have picked out 4 main points that I'd like to discuss today. The first one is for all the players out there, like for the AAM ecosystem players, not only for the OEMs, but also for the companies that are working on the digital infrastructure, on the physical infrastructure, on more the customer-facing side, like booking apps and so on. They need to be the Dagobert duck, how we call it in Germany, or the Scrooge McDuck, how it's named in the US. And what does I mean with this? We looked into the 5 AAM companies that went public because that's very convenient because they have to publish all their data, namely Joby, Archer, Eve, Vertical, and Lilium. And we looked at, okay, what is their cash balance currently, and what is their cash burn? Under the assumption that nothing changes, no savings on the cash burn side, no further raise, we see that at least 2 companies might have a little problem, at least in the next 12 to 18 months. One is Lilium and one is Vertical. Vertical is a little exception here because they secured 100 million equity subscription line, which they can use to further issue shares. So they might even be able to prolong their runway. Best positioned here is Joby, with a very high cash balance, but also the highest cash burn rate, with roughly 80 million per quarter. But given they have such a high cash balance, they're able to last until July 26. And this in a time where the overall venture capital market is shrinking by the month and by the quarter. And this, what I've showed previously, were only the 5 companies that were listed on the stock exchange. We have many other players out there which are not listed, and smaller ones. And they will need funding in the coming months and coming years. Some already are in the process of raising funds. Some are more successful than others. And this is not left alone only to the OEMs. We are talking about the overall ecosystem because we need to build that ecosystem, and that requires investments. Second, and that goes now back to the OEM actually, like to the, let's say, Volocopter, for example. Be the future solver. What do I mean by this? We all have this vision in mind that AAM becomes a mass market. And it's not only left for the rich, for the premium segment. I mean, that will be the case at the beginning, but in the long term, it should target the mass market. Everybody should be able to use this transport mode. And it's therefore so important that every OEM not only focuses on their product now, but actually already working on the challenges that are apparent that will become important once the transportation mode is introduced into the market. Only a few points to name here is infrastructure. And that's great that we're here today, that we saw the second flight of the Volocopter today in collaboration with Urban V, for example, because that's exactly what we need. Because without infrastructure, the overall market will not scale, and hence the market will remain a niche market. We also need to address talent. We already know that pilots are not widely available. Airlines like Lufthansa already face this struggle, and it will even intensify once advanced air mobility will become a reality, and we need to tackle this issue. And in doing so, like to focus on these issues already, we are able to not moving into a niche market, but actually entering a mass market or enable it. The next point is be the mobility solution. And we also saw this today when, at least I was listening very closely to the Volo IQ presentation, which was very interesting. Because it's important that not only focusing on the air mobility section when we look at the overall customer journey, but actually that the OEM looks beyond it, looks at the pre-air mobility journey, but also the post-ground mobility customer journey. Because in the end, what matters is that the customer has a time saving, that he saves time by using this air mobility service. And hence, it's very important that all these mobility options that are out there are connected with each other. So, for example, that the customer is very, that it's very easy to book a transportation journey from leaving the home, for example, using an Uber or Lyft to the Vertiport, then taking the air taxi to Rome downtown, and then continue with another transportation mode, for example. But that also includes, for example, when one or the other is somehow disrupted. For example, the Uber shows up 5 minutes late, and then you're missing the air taxi. So that there's a system, a digitally connected system, that automatically rebooks you to the next available service. And I think Volocopter is doing a great job here, like by looking at the overall customer journey. The last point I'd like to make is be the ecosystem orchestrator. We saw today that, and I said it already several times, that AAM is not just the aircraft, there are many other building blocks like MRO services we need to take into consideration, the digital infrastructure like UTM, for example, the vertiports, and they come in many different designs and many different use cases here. Because we have verti-hubs, for example, we have vertiports, we have vertipads, we have verti-stops, and they all need to be put in place somehow. So it's important to not look into isolation, but actually see it as a system and collaborate on a large scale. And we need to further foster this collaboration, because when we look at how the ecosystem is developing, then we see that the actual air vehicle, like the aircraft, is receiving sometimes too much attention. We have currently 395 active projects globally, but not so many in the other areas, like physical infrastructure. There are a few companies who are focusing on it, the digital infrastructure, the same, and so on. So it's very important to also further enhance and make it more attractive also for investors to invest into the other building blocks. Because when we see where is the money going towards, it's rather the AAM aircraft and not the other building blocks. And again, it's great to see this today here, because that's exactly what we need, this collaboration, this sandbox, these tests to bring the ecosystem together. And with this, I'd like to finish and summarize. And it's very simple. Simply be it. Yeah? Be the Scrooge McDuck. Be the future solver. Be the orchestrator of the overall ecosystem. And also be the mobility solution, so that it really creates a benefit for the overall customer. And in this way, become really a mass transportation mode, and not only a niche transportation mode in the long run. And in my opinion, when I look at these 4 points, Volocopter is, in my opinion, well positioned in number 2, 3, and 4. I'm unable to make any comments on the first one, because obviously it's a private company. No data is publicly available to look at. But at least for 2, 3, and 4, I'm confident, and I'm happy to see what I'm seeing today. So thank you very much for your attention, and yeah, feel free to reach out if you have questions.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Colin. there is a, just to comment on for a second on what you said, there is a shared belief in the technology sector that times of crisis, times of global economic downturn and challenges are actually a moment in which you can really see startups, especially technology startups, are forced to rethink their business model, rethink their priorities, to really make an effort to develop sustainable, financially viable business model, and that's sort of like considered a good thing. That's the period that allows us to sort of filter out the good players and let them emerge. And most of the large technology companies that we see today listed in the stock markets were actually born in phases of economic downturn. So maybe we are entering in one such phase that will allow us very soon to see some of the strongest players in this industry emerge. But let's now move into the second session of today, which is a panel discussion, which will be moderated by Munish. Munish, let me introduce him. From Eurocontrol, Senior Manager for Business Development. Please come on stage and I'll let you introduce the panel, and I'll switch roles.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Isn't it wonderful to be at Rome Airport? What a show these guys have put up. I go around across Europe looking at various things related to advanced air mobility, and I really think that what I like over here is various parts of the stakeholders are working together. I love it as such. Can I ask my panelists to come and take their seats, and I'll explain and introduce each one of them. During the course of this 1 hour, ladies and gentlemen, Colin has done a fantastic job to highlight the overview of where the money is flowing, or where it's not flowing for that matter. He's also highlighted what we need to be as such. Carlo has just highlighted to us, we are going through crisis situation, whether it's geopolitically or it's the cost of living crisis and so on. But never miss an opportunity, never that a crisis provides to you. So going where we are today, to the time that Colin was showing in beyond 2030, 2040 and so on, where do we expect our cities to be? I don't need to tell you that we have a need to work on relieving the traffic congestion. We need to do that because we want to provide more economic activity in Europe. We want to create more jobs. We want to continuously complement, but not compete, other forms of transport. But are we ready? And you will have noticed in the demonstration earlier on, great job done by Volocopter for that matter. You will have noticed and spoken to people as well. There are many challenges. Some of those were highlighted earlier. Are we ready with infrastructure, as Colin pointed out? Well, I think we are going to unravel some of those mysteries with my panelists today, both technically, operationally, but also non-technically. Are we ready with the public? Is the public ready to accept it? Maybe yes, maybe no. You will have noticed, or if you haven't, I can let you know that a couple of days ago there was an accident in Australia where an UAS collided into an electric wire and it caused some damage. Unfortunately, a lot of the news that we see in the TV is mainly negative. But I don't think it's all negative. Do you? Do you think it's all negative? I don't think so, because it's a ratio of what the risks are with advanced air mobility versus what the opportunities are. Now, to unravel all these mysteries, I'd like to introduce my panel today in no particular order. You've already seen Alexander Uhling from Volocopter. Alexander is the Chief Digital, where is he? Oh, there you are. Alexander Uhling is the Chief Digital Officer, so welcome here, Alexander. Carlo, I think I don't need to introduce Carlo, he's introduced himself very well, as you may have noticed. Carlo Tursi is the CEO of Urban 5. My next guest is Alexandro Enrico from Leonardo, and Alexandro is the head of business scenarios. Welcome, Alexandro. My next guest is Giulia Costagli. I think that's how you pronounce it, right? Costagli, right. And Giulia is from Rail and Road Transport, Ferrovie dello Stato. She's the head of innovation and digital. So welcome, welcome to you. My next guest is Luca Caligari from Microsoft. Luca is the COO of Microsoft Germany. Welcome. I have with me Robin Riedel. Robin is a partner at McKinsey. Well, we all know McKinsey, the management consulting firm. Welcome, Robin. Last but not least, I have a test pilot who is now the Chief Innovation Officer of ITA Airways, Francesco Presice. There you are, Francisco. Thank you for being here. What I'd like to do is perhaps before we get into Q&A, and ladies and gentlemen, during the course of this 50 minutes, please have your questions ready. We're not just going to chat with each other about some important topics, but you are the people that we've come here to talk to. So please do ask your questions, and someone will come with a microphone, and you'll be able to use that. But perhaps initially, I'd like to ask each of my panelists to use a couple of minutes just to introduce a key message from their organization. What is it that their organization is doing to support advanced air mobility, and what role will they play in future? Let me first start with Alexander from Volocopter.
Thank you. So Volocopter is the pioneer in urban air mobility, right? And early enough, the company started with the famous yoga ball as the first of its kind to put electric motors and some propellers on a vehicle and fly a couple of hops through the air. It's more than 10 years ago. And so far, we have introduced our VoloCity, which is our type certification vehicle, and we will fly in 2024 here in Rome. And today you saw the 2X, which we first flew in 2017, and also Singapore and on all the continents around the world. And Volocopter, I think, is contributing a lot to the urban air mobility ecosystem. Last but not least, I'm responsible also for VoloIQ, which is our operational backend. With that system, we enable all the loose ends to come together, right? And on the other hand, this is very crucial for not just having, the economics ready when it comes to book a flight and the end-to-end customer journey, but also for safety and safety procedures and having a digital twin of our entire operations. So this will give us, at any point in time, best world-class information in near real time about what's happening, and it gives us also the opportunity to optimize and understand not just the operations, also the vehicle. And in the near future, we will see advancements that then come also to our other product lines, like the VoloConnect, our long-range vehicle, or the VoloDrone, which is our cargo vehicle, right? Based on that information, we also paved the way for a certification with the EASA that now is a blueprint for certification in that space worldwide. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexander. You've touched on a number of topics, and I think we will peel the layers of the onion to try and give more information about it. My next speaker here would be, and you know him very well, you've introduced yourself very well, Carlo, but perhaps you could compliment again on what your organization is doing.
And I'll try to be extremely short. So I'm the CEO of UrbanV. At UrbanV, we like to say that we bring advanced air mobility to cities. So obviously, as you've seen and heard already today, our focus is vertiports, the ground infrastructure for advanced air mobility. We design, build, and operate vertiports. But very much in line also with the topic of our panel discussion, I'd like to say that we are an ecosystem player. We obviously cannot do it all alone, and what we do and what we are specializing in doing is not only bringing our core competencies on the ground infrastructure piece, but also bringing together all the other many ecosystem players that are needed in order to make advanced air mobility a reality in any given city, in any given region around the world.
Thank you, Carlo. So very much a team player, trying to bring everyone together. My next speaker is from Leonardo. That's Alessandro Enrico. Alessandro, would you like to deliver your key message, please?
Leonardo, as you know, is a leader in the rotorcraft market, and we are working on a new ways.
I think your microphone isn't working very well.
Okay. And we started to work on a new concept with the 609 that you probably already know, the tilt rotor. And in 2011, we, first electrical prototype, the Project Zero, that most of you probably know. And currently, we are working on different topics within the urban air mobility space. The first one is exploring, the logistic application.
Microphone, please.
I don't know, probably it's, my fault. And the other topic is the application of drones in order to get information and to use the information to provide different services. And we are working on a wide range of drones. I mean, small ones and the tactical ones. And last but not least, we are working with ENAV and on D-Flight for the development of the UTM platform, Italian UTM platform.
Excellent. So we have the OEM manufacturer really focusing on safety and bringing people together. We have the Urban 5, the ecosystem guys who want to play together, and a very well-known organization in engineering and aerospace, Leonardo. Let's move on to the next one. That's Ferrovia dello Stato. So Giulia, would you like to deliver your message?
Yes, FS Group is one of the main mobility in Italy, because the group manage about 50,000 of kilometers of rail and of infrastructure, rail and streets, with the two and ANAS, and manage every day about 9,000 of trains and a lot of private vehicle in our streets. Also buses, ferries, and so the mobility is for us a main, the main element. And so we are interesting in study and deep informations about also new mode, like for example higher urban mobility, because for us it could be an opportunity to connect our station also in this context that are not so easy to arise, or for example the stations in the main city where the traffic jam is a problem to arise the station. Now the FS Group has elaborated in this year a new business plan that is a very big business plan, because it deals with 119 billion of euros of investment that concern new infrastructure and infrastructures, digitalization, connections in general, and our main goal in this new business plan is to give a better service. The mobility will become a service more than in the past, in which the focus was most on the product and on the system, and not on the service in the door-to-door exceptions.
Sure. Sure. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So we need you. The ecosystem needs you, because we can only benefit if we have intermodal transport. So we need the rail, we need the road, we need the air, we also need maritime to try and connect all of them. My next speaker is Luca Caligari from Microsoft. Luca, how can Microsoft help?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we are actually a cloud platform provider. And we have been working very close with Volocopter. You have seen the VoloIQ, the services behind VoloIQ, specifically Azure, has been provided by Microsoft. And coming back to your question, actually, we are in a privileged position because most of the panelists here are all partner or customer of Microsoft. So at the end of the day, we see the business model of each part of that one. And because of that one, we have a responsibility to go deep on the business model and merge the ecosystem together. And one way to look at that one could be going two directions. The first one is like thinking about sustainability. And when you think about our aerospace, like going to a net zero aerospace emission for the future, as a company, we started already like in 2012, and now we have a goal to go carbon negative by 2030. And it's going in the right direction. But again, you need to be intentional when you want to do that one. And every one of us needs to think that one as the business model since the beginning. And the second part goes to the interoperability of the data and the security of the data. No? And you put the customer at first. as every one of us. And when you look at that one, the customer wants to be sure that like there is a safety and is also like the data are protected in that part. And that's also how we build our solution. And we start from a structural security point of view. So this, I think it could be two parts where we can work together as an ecosystem.
That makes perfect sense, Luca. Data is king, and I think we can fly as many of these vehicles up in the air. If you don't connect them and use data to provide those value-added services, then I think the business cases will not be positive, definitely. And I'd like to move on to Robin. Robin's from McKinsey. Robin, what's your message?
No, it's, I mean, at McKinsey, we get the chance to work with the broad ecosystem. So we help regulators figuring out the space. We work with investors who are trying to figure out whether they invest or not. Aerospace incumbents, airlines, airports. So we kind of serve the whole ecosystem. And there's a few things that we've learned in the last couple of years in that. And I think it very much mirrors some of the messages Colin had earlier. I think one thing that is striking to me still is that if you look at the, fundamental costs that it will cost us to move a passenger by a mile in the future, only about 10%, depending on the model, actually ties back to the aircraft itself. But the biggest cost drivers are going to be things like the battery, and how do we think about the battery life cycle, the ground infrastructure, how do we think about ground handling and landing sites and all of that. Third one would be maintenance. And so what's interesting, though, is that about 85% of the people, the manpower in this industry, is working on the vehicle, the aircraft. And of course, the vehicle is the first big thing we need to get done. It is a absolutely necessary part of this, but it's not sufficient. We need to actually think about how do we build sustainable businesses out of that? How do we get the vertiport infrastructure into place? How do we think about the pilot pipeline into this? So there's a whole lot more that's coming to this, and I think the key message from our side is that as an ecosystem, we've made so much progress on the vehicles. We really have to catch up, particularly on topics like the vertiport infrastructure and how we actually make that business case close as well. So that would probably be the biggest message we see right now.
Very clear, very clear. It's seeing is believing, and that's what the average community Joe Blogs on the road would look at these things flying in the air and make their own conclusions. Informed communities like us over here will look at it from a different perspective. But I think that's the journey that we as an ecosystem need to cover from convincing them. Now, my last but not least, my next speaker, of course, is Francesca. Now, being a test pilot and being the Chief Innovation Officer now for ITA Airways, try and imagine if you're flying up in the air and you see an eVTOL or drone. What would your key message be, Francesca?
Well, first of all, thanks very much for this occasion. And I do consider it very important because today we have all the stakeholders of this new disruptive technology that we're going to change completely the wave for transportation and civil aviation. And I said all the stakeholders because they are not just us, but it's the customers, because they are the most important in this business. Because as operator, we live if we have customers. Otherwise, there is no business. But having said so, coming back to your question, for me, drones are the enemy of the pilots. Yeah. So we have to instead to change our mind. Yeah. Let me say that today I have two hats as a test pilot and the Chief of Innovation in ITA Airways. Well, today we have a very fertile, a very good ground for two big things. For innovators and for also for investors, because this is not just putting on a table a technical mean, but also to invest, because out of this business we're going to have a development of technology, employment, new work, and obviously economics. ITA Airways has three very big pillars in the business plan, because we are a company, we are the operators that we just have 1 year from the very first day. And the three big pillars are customer centricity, technology innovation, and obviously sustainability. And today, this system is having all the three in one. And for that reason, especially in this post-pandemic new normality, we do consider very important because we want to be the leader in this business, not just the followers. And that's, I thank Aeroporti di Roma that organized this good event to show how Italy is very, very aiming to achieve this leadership.
Excellent. That's a great message as well. So if in the past eVTOLs and drones have been enemies of pilots, we need to take this journey to convert them into friends. So perhaps we are currently approaching from being an enemy through frenemy into friends. So that's the journey we need to take. Anyway, and my name's Manish Khurana. I'm from Eurocontrol. We're in the business of safety of aviation. We work with our colleagues, ENAC, Airport de Paris, no doubt, and all other European partners to ensure that when you fly in the air, you're safe. Right, we've got about 30 to 35 minutes left between us. I'd like to kick off a Q&A discussion, but someone mentioned, I think more than once it was mentioned, start with the most important stakeholder in this ecosystem, public. That's what we're here for. We're here to improve the quality of lives of citizens living in big cities, metropolitan cities, and in the suburbs as well. But perhaps let me start with you, Robin. I mean, you guys look at McKinsey, you look at from all over the perspective, really. Well, today's perception is largely that drones, when they appear in the media, they appear for the wrong reasons. And therefore, there's a certain negative perception amongst the minds of people. What do we need to do to change that? Because surely, we're doing this because we think that there are more gains than losses. But we need to convince ourselves, but we also need to convince the public. How can we start?
It's a great question, right? It's something that's obviously very much on the mind of many of the other stakeholders. Is if we don't have the public on board, right, we're not going to get infrastructure approved. We're not going to have customers, right? And so there's a big portion of that. I think in a way, as an industry, we always go at it in a bit of a wrong way because we take our own viewpoint of being very technically minded and think about the great technology we're building, where, quite frankly, the average customer and average person out there doesn't really care about how many rotors there are on something or how many kilowatt hours of battery we fly around. Like, they care about what it means for them, both from a risk perspective, right? And that could be privacy, that could be noise, that could be safety, and then from a benefit perspective, right? And there's a trade-off between those two, depending on what the benefit is. So, for example, many of us get really annoyed when there's a loud motorcycle driving outside of our house in the middle of the night because it wakes us up. We don't have the same level of annoyance if it's an ambulance, because we know there's a noble reason for that, and it's saving someone's life. And so I think one of the things we as an industry can do is highlight some of those noble use cases, right? On the drone side, drones in some countries are a major backbone of the healthcare system. They're delivering blood transfusions, vaccinations. They're saving lives day in and day out, right? I think we need to talk about some of these use cases and bring them broader around. And then I think the second part is to actually bring the benefit of this to the average person. I think where urban air mobility, but also drones more broadly, will fail is if we make it the toy of the rich, where, rich people can afford to take an eVTOL aircraft to the airport, but the average person doesn't get to have that experience. And so bringing that experience to people. And I think we're on a good way. If you look at the drone side, by now we have about 5,000 commercial drone deliveries every day of everyday goods, anywhere from, coffee to ice cream to, healthcare goods. And this is while we still don't have broad regulation that allows this. Once regulation comes about, this will be vastly accessible. So that is winning people over every day. I can tell you, when you go to these communities that actually have drone delivery service and you ask people, are they annoyed by the sound or the drones flying around? No, they think it's cool and they love the fact that they can order something to be delivered home, and they see the benefit in all of that. So I think we just need to really highlight what does this bring to society and minimize the risks on the other hand.
Very true, and you highlighted the coolness. When I talk to my teenage kids, they love it. Honestly, they want to have it tomorrow. But when I talk to my mum, she's scared, really. And I think there's this different opinions within the different categories of the society. And I think we've got to move forward. Alex, from your point of view, doing events like these, when you showcase the use of urban air mobility and what your vehicles can do, can that help in changing the perception? Could you see extending such events to even bringing in parents and families and perhaps even university students to come and see these? Will that help?
Yeah, I think so. So I can give you a real-world example of that. A couple of weeks or like 2 months ago, we had an exhibition in Berlin at ILA, and it was one of the largest events in that space in Central Europe, right? And like yesterday, when I flew down to Rome from Berlin, right, I was asked at the airport, like, wearing a Volocopter t-shirt, right, and I was asked like 3-4 times by strangers running around, right, hey, are you guys from Volocopter when you are flying? And you know, the perceptions, this is changing now, right? A couple of years ago when I started also with Volocopter and the company were already a couple of years old, right, no one really cared about that, right? So was caring about that. And now we are entering a new age where, you know, people see more and more, you know, we are in the public news, you know, on a daily basis, like yesterday, and it's the frequency of touch points, not just with the brand Volocopter, but with the entire ecosystem is starting to take off. I think everyone is interested in have a safe and comfortable, you know, travel between A and B, right? When it comes to, I'm landing on a bigger airport like here, and I want to go into the city center. It's a mess, right? So it takes me more than an hour in a bumpy ride, right? If I could have another option to get there, which is affordable, and that's what we're aiming for, right? Then this will, I think the public will love that, right?
I agree with you. So no doubt, privacy is a big thing for public acceptance, noise reduction, visual reduction, but also that with events that take place, such as the one that took place 2 days ago in Australia, where a drone collided into an electric wire. Safety is a big thing, security and safety. And this is where Leonardo has got a lot of experience, perhaps. And Alessandro, because you work both on the civilian side and the military side, is there anything we can learn from the military side that we could perhaps use in the civilian side to improve and give that degree of safety satisfaction to the public?
Yeah, I think we can give a more broader answer on that, you know. First of all, we are witnessing, you know, a sort of change of paradigm presently, because in the past we can saw, you know, this transfer of military technology into civil one. Now something is changing, and we can see the other way around. For example, in US, we are witnessing, for example, launch of Agility Pride program. That is something new, where the MOD want to get from the civil technology, so they are experimenting, for example, the eVTOLs. But in general, when you want to target a new market, especially from scratch, like in this case, they generally start from what is really needed in order to find the right balance between benefits and drawbacks, and not something that you can define, you know, in a white room alone with yourself. So probably, for sure, for example, for a military, getting back to the military application, we saw the first drones application on military market. And now we transferred some of these application into civil ones. For the civil ones, I see instead the best application in order to introduce this kind of, to launch this kind of new market for emergency rescue. And this is, you know, a market that already exists in the rotorcraft application, for example. And not only, broadly speaking, not only for transportation, I see application for, you know, getting back to the military one, and getting information with drones application, with UAVs, and logistic application as well. So, I mean,
there's a lot to learn from military, and I think, and I'd like to share this with you guys, is that on the 29th of November of this year, the European Commission is releasing its EU Drone Strategy 2.0. Some of the members who are part of development of this are actually sitting in this room, and I met them earlier on. And this part that we've just talked about is very prominent in it. How can we learn from military to support civilian world and vice versa? And as Robin highlighted, and so did Alex yourselves, how can we improve the visibility of the benefits that the eVTOLs and drones bring to society? We've got a role to play there to make that transformation, and perhaps creating some kind of living laboratories could be useful, which could take a slightly bigger form and shape to the one that you guys have organized it today, as such, where you invite the community. Before I move on to the next question, which we change the topic, is there a question from the audience about the public perception that you would like to ask? Anyone? Okay, hold your questions for later on. Let's move on then. Let's move on to changing the debate from satisfying the customer to bringing various stakeholders together. Now, I'm from the aviation world, and so are some of the other fellas, but there are others who are not. I can tell you from my world that this is probably the first time in our world where the aviation community is having to work with non-aviation partners and stakeholders directly, not just indirectly, but directly. And as a result, you know, we speak a certain language. We have lots of jargon, technical jargon, operational jargon. Our other stakeholders, who will be from rail, road, data people, maritime people, medical people who want to benefit from this, construction community, search and rescue operations, so on and so forth. They speak a slightly different language. We need to learn their language, they need to learn ours. But maybe this is where perhaps, Julia, you come into it. From your organization that's responsible for rail and road transformation. How do we convince you, and what do you need to do to talk about the same terminology with other stakeholders so that we can see through the same window?
I think that you have already convinced me that this is interesting matter, interesting issues in which we have we have to face, because the mobility is, as you said, has been so far divided on the third mobility, the flights, and the terrestrial mobility. Now we have to connect them to do an intermodality that pass through trains, roads, and also higher mobility with new and emerging transport system. I think that the third dimensions also for us will be an opportunity and will be an element to connect with our system. Now there are always a lot of question points that have to be solved. First of all, the transport demand that can be transferred or connected between higher urban mobility and trains, for example, or rail transport. Because our system, in particular regarding to rail system, is a mass transport, so there are a lot of people that took a train and that arrives in different modes, for example, by bicycle, on foot, or by tram or metro. And so this new system that can be the fly system is for us a new mode that can be connected to the station pole, in which there are the meeting of all different systems. As I said, we have to face some question point, to resolve some question point. First of all, the demand, on the other hand, the permitting that are necessary to allow this system to flight in urban areas, because we know that is not so simple to do, and it's a new system that need a new business model that have to be constructed. Okay. And at all.
That's clear. So there are benefits to connect the rail and the road to the advanced air mobility, to give more options to the citizens. but we still need to revise the business model. And I know there are some that a lot of people are working on, and there are technical challenges as well. And this is where, Luca, I'd like to perhaps ask you on how you think a data-sensitive company like Microsoft can play a role, and what are you seeking as a stakeholder from other partners?
So what I really like that has been told, that one way to bring everyone together, and think about the new business model, is starting from the customer perspective. Because even when you think about the data, you need to think of the customer is becoming much more sensitive also on that part. So as a company, what we're trying to offer, actually try to normalize the data and be sure that all the players can have data that are integrated. And then you go, of course, to the cloud on that part, but then requires, again, being very transparent in this ecosystem on the business model behind it, and what are the different legislation that have an impact on that part. Because it's different much from one country to the others, as you can imagine. So that's more where we try to bring the ecosystem together on bringing as a common factor all the learning that we have done, because we built our capability starting from the data.
Very good point. And I think, a few times the word sustainability has come into it. And I think there are bigger goals that's going to bind the different stakeholders together. They might come from different industries, but the bigger goals will bind them together. And perhaps, Francesco, from a commercial aviation perspective, how do you see, because our industry, the aviation industry, as we've evolved over the years, is pretty conservative, let's be honest. The changes happen slowly. The business model changes, but not dramatically. What challenges do you think an airlines would face in talking to and working with non-aviation stakeholders?
Well, the data that we received just a few weeks ago about how the summer season went after the pandemic, it's quite impressive. The customers started to travel again, and at the rate which is much higher than what was expected. And that is very important, because it is not like before it was. Now, let me introduce again the concept that we have to see in another way this business. We have not just to see what the technical innovation is giving to us, but what the customer needs. What is the customer needs? And then apply to their needs the technical innovation. It's like this thing. This thing has changed the way that we connect.
Right.
And we are in the transport and the civil aviation environment, we are at the same level that we were a few years ago with the telephone. We have to anticipate the trend, because if we follow the trend, we will never reach the balance. So now, today, we are in this position. And again, we have to see ahead. We have to have a vision, and then to draw the line how to get to that point. And as a company, as an operator, we are doing so. Intermodality is very important, because we have to take care about our customer. It's not just to travel from airport to airport, but from where the traveler wants to start the journey, where to want to end the journey, because we want to give them the pleasure of traveling, not the problems of traveling.
You make a very good point, and I'd like to bring one of my own experiences from it. Is before Eurocontrol, I worked in Dubai, at the Dubai airport, and we did an exercise on what our strategy should be from an ANSP perspective versus an airport perspective, and we did it separately. We got an answer, but there were two different answers, perhaps to two different questions. And then we realized we're actually asking the wrong question. It's not the question of how good an ATC can work, or how an airline can work, or an airport can operate. Actually, it's about what you just said. It's about passenger experience. If you take end-to-end view of a passenger from the time that he or she leaves the office or home takes a bus or a train or a taxi to the airport experience, traveling through the airlines, landing on the other side, getting through the airport, and then all the way up to their destination, whether it's a hotel or it's another house or that. And what we found in the second question that we asked, that the problems were not with individual parts, it was with the entire system, because the sum of all parts was not equal to the entire system. And the biggest problem we had over there, and this is going back about 10 years ago, it was when people arrived at the airport in Dubai, the problem was taxis, believe it or not. And the wonderful experience that they had sitting in an Emirates Airlines, and if they were in the business class, they had a wonderful bar there, they had a great experience, but it just evaporated the minute they had to stay in the queue for taxis for too long. So when they reached home, they couldn't talk about the positive experience. They just talked about, oh, well, I couldn't get the taxi. That was a real pain, you know what? And that's what you've highlighted, Robin. I totally agree with that. So moving on to that one, Robin, from a McKinsey point of view, where you guys look at laterally, what is the current perception in minds of people for multimodal transport? In Europe, for example, I know the European Commission has an initiative of single ticketing. You should be able to take a flight from Rome all the way down to Athens, if you like, and be able to buy one ticket that covers your rail, your road, your air, and if there is maritime or coastal transport there, it covers that as well. How far? I'm not sure how far we are, but what does your research show?
Look, I think we're quite frankly early. I think many people identify the problem of intermobility is what we need, right? Intermodality. To your point, right? We don't care about going from airport to airport. We actually want to go from a specific place to a specific place. That includes last mile, first mile, and the same is going to be true for urban air mobility. I think the challenge is, even though we recognize this, there is a lot of complexity with just the multitude of stakeholders. And we're getting better, right? You can now use certain apps or certain processes that get you, the planning at least from intermodality point of view. You could plan multiple modes, right? We could sometimes buy tickets across multiple modes, so I can, buy the Uber in my airline app to get to the airport and so on and coordinate that. But one of the things where this all breaks down is when you have what we call irregular operations. The moment that, the car that you're taking to get to the airport to catch a ride is delayed, now you're missing your flight. The airline will say, well, you weren't at the airport at the right time. The taxi company will say, well, the traffic was bad, so it's not my fault. And so as a customer, you're still feeling that friction, right? And I think as we're going into intermodality, we need to minimize these seams between different modes, but really also think about who takes what responsibility when things don't run quite as well. Because it's one thing to buy a ticket that gets me from A to B, but if I, miss a connection between those intermodal cases, that's really where the big problem arises. And so I think we're in an infancy in a way. We're making good progress, but I think there's big breakthroughs to be had, and I think technology, AI to a degree, digital definitely, some of the modes we're talking about here, and the willingness of an ecosystem to come together and actually much more collaboratively work on these problems, I think will get us there. But on that journey, I think we're still pretty early.
Agreed. And one of the things that I see when I go around various wonderful cities across Europe is who takes a lead to bring all these multimodal transports together? Is it one of the leaders of these forms of transport? Is it the city municipality? Is it the federal government? Is it the industry? Who takes a lead? And there are different forms that are appearing in different parts of Europe. I've seen cases where in Estonia, for example, a city called Tartu, over there, it is the municipal corporation that takes a lead. The mayor of the city says, right, I want to solve the problems of this city, and I'm going to be the coordinator. Goes and talks to the ANSP, the Air Navigation Service Provider, the airports, the airlines, the drone operators, and the regulators, and so on. But in other cities, it's not quite simple as such. So this is an open question. Do you have any question before we move any further? A lady over there. Could someone provide a microphone, please? Yes, ma'am. If you could introduce yourself and your company before you ask the question, please.
Well, I'm Anouk Boner from the Netherlands, and I'm a journalist, Italy correspondent, so I will use this for a piece. Well, one of my questions. You address the pleasure of travel, and I think that's a fair point. We all have been stuck. There's no, okay. But what about the quality of city life? Because if you talk about it doesn't need to be a luxury product, you talk about a democratic service, it means quantity, we have to scale up. But if I think about living in Rome in the city center and it's full of drones and full of these innovative helicopters, I would go crazy. So what about the peace of living and how would you guarantee that? Because an airport aside of the city or outside of the city or a train station is a very different story than having an airspace full of flying objects.
A very good point, a very pertinent point. Carlo, maybe this is one that we start with you.
Sure. I think when we think about the future and when we think about new forms of mobility like the one that we're witnessing and that we witness today, I don't think we need to be afraid of the future that is ahead of us. First of all, we need to remember that as everything, it will be a gradual process. The arrival of advanced air mobility, the integration of advanced air mobility with other forms of transport will be a gradual process where many different stakeholders will be involved, citizens among them, first among them. And in the initial years, we need to remember the volume of traffic that we can expect above our heads will be extremely limited. The scale will be limited, and over time we will learn, how acceptable it is for people to get used not only to having noisy, pollution emitting for the most part cars on our road, but also frankly quieter and non-pollution emitting vehicles flying over our heads. It's definitely something new. It's definitely something we're not used to. As probably, people who saw the first cars 120, 130 years ago thought about these strange horseless carriages, as they used to be called, right? Roaming around their streets, which had no roads designed for cars, at least yet. So the infrastructure, also the air infrastructure, arguably, over our heads will change and will evolve. Corridors will be developed, rules will be written on how and where and when these vehicles will be allowed to operate in such a way that it will not disrupt our livelihood. It will not disrupt the life and the quality of life of our citizens, but that instead we will be able to harness the advantages that having an additional form of mobility, which can be fast, can be efficient, and is inherently sustainable from an environmental standpoint, can bring us.
Thank you. There was another hand that went up. Okay, but Microsoft plays a huge role in providing value-added services. If I compare to what Microsoft provided 10 years ago to what you guys do today, it's amazing. The journey is amazing, how the quality of life has improved. Yes, 10 years ago we might have said, well, I don't want too much reliance on my computer or even the iPhone, for example. I hate when my teenage kids are always on their phone and I can't get rid of them from there. So it's just crazy. But at the end of the day, it also gives them value. How does Microsoft see this in future when we're flying perhaps not one or two, but eVTOLs and drones at scalable level in cities?
So it comes to the concept of our mission, that is empower every people and organization in the world to achieve more. So again, start putting the customer in front. So if I think like in 10 years from now, and this is exactly what we are evolving as an organization, is understanding the full ecosystem needs from customer, from different needs that could be like more scalable, as you were mentioning before. Of course, it's going to be a process that starts more premium in the beginning, learning, and the feedback loop of like data around the evolution of that part that will improve like the way that we accelerate the support of technology to make everyone life better. At the end of the day, time for sure is a currency. That is like everyone agree on that part. The second one is environment. And again, I know that I'm repeating myself, but it comes to the safety. And safety is from a consumer perspective in very different perspective. If you put these three parts in front, I believe that the majority of population will agree on the evolution of a much more scalable path, because that's like, you need to start from some priority for people. And these three, when you talk about it with all the data that we have from people, are the three ones that are top of mind for everyone.
Thank you, Luca. We've got about, I'd say 8 minutes left, and there are two more challenges I want to talk about. The next one really is, so if we think that these eVTOLs and drones are going to provide us value, create jobs, spur economic activity, so what's the problem? Why can't we just do it today? This is where I'd like to bring you in, Alex. What are the challenges we face in integrating the eVTOLs in the airspace today, as you see it?
Yeah, so the entire airspace traffic management, as we see it today, is a very manual task, right? You guys know that much better, right? And it needs a lot of effort of a lot of people on a daily basis in real time, watching on screens, having decisions on the traffic that's happening. You can do that if you have hundreds of people, right, in a big aircraft going to land on an airport like Aeroporto di Roma, right? But when it comes to fly within a city where you fly much closer to the ground, you have less time for decisions. And you're not just, can talk to someone else that helps you out of a certain dangerous situation. So you need to automate much more, and you need to automate on the highest safety level as well. So the interface between the aircraft, right, and the air traffic can't be just voice, right? Because it works for us humans, right? But there's more and more automation introduced to the space, also to traditional airliners and bigger aircraft. And we will see a lot of gains in efficiency also on top of that. Because all this manual work, right, is also very inefficient. It's not only that it's not failure-proof, right? It's also inefficient. And I think that the traditional airspace traffic management can learn a lot and advance a lot also from that movement of urban air mobility. And there is a shift in that industry. I mean, that's probably not interesting for an end user, right? But when it comes to safety, right, this is definitely the case and the subject.
It's not interesting until there's an incident.
Yeah.
As Francesco will tell us from the airlines. Francesco, really from an airlines business, really, integration of these new entrants, we call them, in very low-level airspace, in the airspace, that provides challenges for your industry.
Well, it doesn't, as long as the regulatory authority is in the game. And that's is another important piece of our work. We have to put on the same table also the regulatory authority, because things is going to be different. The airspace is going to be different than it was. And we have to find a new solution to make it simple to use this new tools.
Agreed, yes. So if we load up the air traffic controllers, who are my colleagues sitting in the air traffic control room, and having to deconflict not just the commercial aircraft, but also the eVTOLs in future, they simply cannot manage the traffic. It won't happen. We need automation for the various airspace users to be to help the air traffic controllers. And I, for one, do not see a huge role, hopefully not for the air traffic controllers, once we make the advanced air mobility operations autonomous. And the only way we're going to get positive business cases is when we make it autonomous. There's a journey that we're going to carry. That's what Alex has talked about earlier on, perhaps firstly with the pilot on board, but we have to go from that journey towards autonomy. The question, and this is the last question, then we wrap up really, is to all of you guys, if you were to close your eyes and say, what are the key milestones we as a community need to achieve in the next, 20 years or so? You don't have to map out the roadmap, but just share with us some of the key milestones that you feel that we need to achieve in the next 10 to 20 years. Let's start with you, Robin, and then we'll move our way through.
Okay.
Sorry, Carlo.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Someone has to start and someone has to end.
Thank you.
Well, look, it's a fascinating question, right? I think for me, probably the biggest one, just to name one milestone, is to get to a competitive price point where it actually enables the average person to be able to benefit from that technology, whether that's drone delivery or eVTOL flying. Then we get to a point where my mother or my family, not just the geeks that actually love aviation, but normal people, will say, yeah, you know what, I want to participate in that, right? And that has two things. One is the cost needs to come down, and that is a milestone we have to hit. And the other one is the customer experience needs to be so simple and easy, and so, non-technically required, that it's going to be easy to use. So those are two milestones that I'm very much looking for as an industry as we develop to get to where we can really say, this will allow us to scale.
Sure. Francesco?
We have to give a quick win as soon as possible.
Right.
We have to prove the beauty of this new transport mean. And as soon as we do that, the quickest we would achieve the mass production.
Thank you. That's a very good thought. Alexander?
I think to make this happen, we are good to go. We need to stick together, work together on standardization, and then also find the common business models that will enable us to sustain on a future basis. Until then, we need a lot of investments, right? So
good point. Very good point. 3 good points. Julia?
I think that it's important to see one minimum valuable product, to see the the first example of this mobility and so on.
Seeing is believing, yeah. We need to demonstrate to ourselves and to everyone. Luca?
I go by timeline. I mean, awareness, as we are doing now.
Awareness.
Like, I believe that, even this morning, I learned so much about that one that, I was not even aware talking to each one of you. The second part is really coming to a model where, we have a quick win. I agree on that one. You can call it a valuable product, that part. And the third one is cost efficiency. Cost efficiency means regulation behind it also. And that's what we need other stakeholders on this table.
Excellent. Thank you, Luca.
3 milestones. The first one, piloted operation, the first stage.
Right.
The second one, will increase the density in the airspace. And the third one, probably the last one, the adoption of autonomous systems.
Right. Okay, adoption. Last but not least, Carlo.
So a lot has already been said by my fellow panelists, which I completely agree on. So I would just say that in order to get there, a lot has been said about the future. So I would say in order to get there, we need to do things. We need to make things happen. And on that, at Urban Bee, we are lucky to have 4 founding partners and shareholders that are the airports, 4 airport management companies: Rome, Venice, Bologna, Nice, and Côte d'Azur. They're here in the room today, and thanks to their vision, thanks to their commitment, they are allowing us already today to work and put this in practice, not just in theory, not just on beautiful PowerPoint slides, but actually, as we saw today, and this is just the first step of, of our work, to actually do things in practice, to start experimenting, and to start bringing this closer and closer to our lives.
So just do it is your mantra. Nike are going to love you for that one, really are. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think the key takeaways from this session really are, we need to watch out for price points. If it's not cost effective for passengers to use advanced air mobility, they won't take it. Very good point. If it's not convenient from them to walk from their home to places to be able to connect all these, they won't take it. We need to work on that one as well. We need to make sure that they feel safe and secure, as my aviation colleagues highlighted. We also need to use the data to be able to make things easier, perhaps using the iPhone to be able to book tickets for multiple modes of transport as such. And of course, at the end, just do it. Thank you very much. You've been a fantastic audience. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves. I'd like to thank my panelists. Thank you all very much for a session. Thank you. Thank you very much. Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Manish.
So, good morning to everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Vertiport Experience room, panel session. My name is Marina Maschio. I just introducing myself. My name is Marina Maschio. I'm in charge in ADIR as a Safety and Compliance Monitoring Manager of Fiumicino Airport. And now, as moderator, with a pleasure, of Regulated Advanced Air Mobility Panel. Just a few words to introduce our speeches session, which will be focused on the regulatory framework, very important framework, for the future, to the future necessary to enable the new concept of the urban air mobility. Just yesterday, just today, we perform flight tests in an airspace of Class D, a very complex airspace to manage, especially under the point of view of a regulation, because it's not so simple, actually, with the regulation in place to perform this kind of flight in a very complex airspace environment. So, Atlantia, as you know, Urban V, INAC, our Civil Aviation Authority, INAV, our air navigation service provider, with a great effort, we are working in the coordination of the new environment, provider the launch of the first commercial flight of Volocopter in 2024. Tomorrow, because 2 years, especially under the point of view regulation, are not so much. Would this goal be achievable? So, I'm very proud and honored. Maria Ruiz-Algar is on streaming. I'm very proud, hi Maria. I'm very proud and honored of presenting you Algar Ruiz Maria of the European Aviation Safety Agency, Drone Project Manager and Senior Air Traffic Management Advisor within the Executive Directorate of the European Agency. So welcome, Maria.
Thank you.
My question, what are you planning to be the next steps in the upcoming 2 years under the perspective of European regulation in order to make advanced air mobility a reality and a concrete future ecosystem?
Thank you very much, Marina, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And it is my pleasure to be virtually with you for the grand opening of the first Vertiport in Italy, one of the first Vertiport actually in Europe and in the world, as far as we know. Apologies for not being able to be there physically. As you will see from my speech, is a crucial time for us. We are all pretty busy. It was very difficult for us to travel because we need to finalize the needed regulatory framework that would enable, as we call it, innovative air mobility and urban air mobility operations by 2024. What concretely are the regulatory steps that from European Aviation Safety Agency are we working on in order to allow these operations to be conducted in the whole of Europe by 2024? You may know that we have published this year many deliverables. The first one that I can mention that is very relevant for Vertiport operations is the prototype technical specifications that we published in March this year. These prototype technical specifications are not regulatory binding, they are guidelines, and they contain the design specifications that can be used as a step while waiting for the regulatory developments, the regulations for those Vertiport operations, as well as the certification specifications and the requirements for the competent authorities such as ENAC to certify those vertiport operations, whether they are in the airfield side of an airport or they are located somewhere else in an urban area or in a suburban area. This is the first step that we have published early this year. But as we already announced in our high-level conference on drones in March, we published before the summer break what we consider a very comprehensive regulatory proposal that complements already all the efforts that we are all doing in the certification of the innovative air vehicles, such as Volocopter. So this comprehensive regulatory proposal contains the requirements for the innovative air mobility operators, the pilots licensing scheme as well for those eVTOLs that at the beginning will be manned, and with the time they will be unmanned as soon as we have more automation techniques, and we will start with remote pilot and towards more autonomous operations, but at the beginning those operations will be with manned, so with pilots on board. And we publish in the same proposal as well requirements on how we integrate this innovative air mobility traffic, as you said, in complex aerospace, whether it's in controlled aerospace or in uncontrolled aerospace, and how to place this innovative air mobility traffic together with the implementation of U.S.-based aerospace. This proposal, which consultation finished on the 30th of September, is what we are reviewing at the moment. We have received more than 1,300 comments, actually 1,325 comments. Some stakeholders are asking whether they can still submit the comments, but unfortunately the period is over. And since we want to review the comments and make a proposal for the Commission with all the regulation by Q1 2023, most likely we will not accept late comments. Why we are running so fast? Because as you said, Marina, the goal is that Europe is one of the first one in the world implementing IAM, UIM, and therefore these regulations we need to be adopted by us as a committee, by the European Commission by Q1 2024 at the latest. Otherwise it will not allow ENAC and other national aviation authorities to approve those IAM operators, issue those pilot's license, and enable those early operations that the community, the European industry, as well as the member states have in mind for 2024. We all need to be proud of these achievements. So you, the European industry, you, the European member states, so you have helped EASA actually, is your work. We are facilitators. We make things happening with your support. So we all need to be very proud because when this is achieved, it will put the European industry and the European member states as very high on the IAM, UIM rank at the world level. This is not all. We are working as well together with you, with the industry and with the member states on maturing the implementation of the UIS operations, the implementation of the UIS, the drones regulation. Some of the operations in an urban environment will be conducted by drones, like cargo delivery, blood transportation and other applications will be conducted by drones. And we have been also working, supporting the initial set of regulations with more, with enabling more complex operations. We are not there yet, but we are working all pretty hard to achieve those more complex operations, so beyond visual line operations in an urban environment. We are at the moment finalizing the first set of acceptable means of compliance and guidance material that will support the implementations of US-based aerospace. You know, the regulation will enter into force on the 26th of January 2023. And we aim to publish those AMCs and guidance material by the beginning of December. We have complemented quite a lot technically and close quite of the existing gaps, the first set of AMCs and guidance material. And we believe that the decision that we will publish with the first complete set of AMCs and guidance material will help the National Aviation Authority, the member states, to establish those US-based aerospace, as well as certify those US-based service providers, being then daughters or sisters of existing navigation service providers, being then privately or other companies. We are already in the process of certifying US-based service providers, and we have established also a task force together with the national competent authorities to try to agree on a common methodology, on guidelines, checklists, application forms to enable a level playing field and a certification approach as harmonized as possible across the EU. The last but not the least, and when one talk about innovative air mobility, one need to think that all this is done for the citizens. So for EASA, it has been always very important, the citizens' expectations, but in the case of urban air mobility, we believe it is even more important because aviation will go closer to them. It will be more visible to the citizens, the vehicles, the air vehicles, and it will have more impact to their life. You know, we conducted a study on the societal acceptance of urban air mobility, and the result of our studies, which are publicly available in our website, we can provide the link if you have not read, obviously gave us some results that we expected. So citizens take for granted that those vehicles that they will fly over the heads will be safe, and they will fly in a safe, secure manner. Not unexpected, citizens have great expectations on sustainability of those operations, obviously. A little bit of surprise for us was what the citizens expected, that those operations will have minimum impact of no impact, or we need to address their concerns of potential impact to wildlife. So the impact those flying drones or air taxis may have on birds and beings or whatever animal that might be impacted by the noise or the frequencies of those vehicles in that aerospace. So we need to address that. And there was another finding that gave us also, and the European Parliament as well, another task, which is they expect that European regulators together with national regulators work together with local stakeholders, local authorities and local stakeholders to enable this happening in an acceptable manner. The European Parliament asked EASA then to work on what we call the IAM hub. This will be a platform, an online platform, and this platform will provide with information, with all what the local decision makers bodies need to know in order to enable IAM implementations in their cities. Obviously, this platform will not be the decision-making body. It will be a supporting tool and will provide the information they need to know from the aviation world that is not so close to, or is not so known to the local aviation authorities. We have received this mandate from the European Parliament, and we are presently working with the support of a contractor yet to be selected. And we have established a task force, which I think it has a composition, including representatives from Italy, which will allow us to make the right decisions for the content of this platform. To give you an idea, this platform will provide, for instance, noise maps of a vehicle, sustainability change, and sustainability values of certain operations. So we do this at the pace that you ask us to do. So we are pretty fast. Everybody's pretty fast. Carmela and her team, enough. Everybody's pretty busy trying to make these things working as they are supposed to do. This will not be all. We believe that in the next 10 years, we will be all still pretty busy working to implement the third dimension of an urban mobility environment. And we are looking forward also to work on the basis of what the European Commission will publish in the next 2 months, actually. At the end of November, they will publish the Drones Strategy 2.0 that will set the missions, the goals, and the objectives for Europe to enable UIS, IAM, UIM, and US space developments in the years to come. So thank you very much for the opportunity given to present all the activities that we are working on. And yeah, so we will be discussing then on the questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. A lot of things to do in few years. And just one comment about the environmental impact and the social acceptance. I think that the best available technology will support any kind of mitigation and barrier to create an environment that doesn't have any kind of impact of environment, birds even as well. So, Maria talked about the member state, the Civil Aviation Authority, and now it's very important to focus on the member state as well and for this framework for us. And it's a pleasure for me to introduce you a distinguished panelist, Carmela Tripaldi, an aeronautical engineer, research and development new technology and airspace director of INAC, our Italian Civil Aviation Authority. Carmela, what the Civil Aviation Authority, INAC, is planning to do in application to the Advanced Air Mobility National Strategic Plan, especially concerning the national regulation.
Thank you very much for giving ENAC the opportunity to set out our thoughts and proposal in cooperation with EASA and our navigation service provider, very important partners. Thank you to Aeroporti di Roma for organizing this event. I would like to have the opportunity to share with you what we are doing, what we plan to do in the future about this aspect in cooperation with the European vision. Emerging technology are changing our way of life, and in particular digitalization, electrification are changing in mobility, including aviation, and making a new modes to move people, goods, and to provide aerial new services. But the question is, how can a regulator, how can we maintain control and order for safety? How can maintain a balance between fostering innovation, protecting consumers' rights, business, and regulates conflicts, resisting too hard to over-regulate? This is the dilemma. Innovation and regulation are different speeds. And as a consequence, the pressing problems needs a new strategy for regulation. So it's a challenge for regulator. We have a new way, we have to have a new way to approach. The old way is not able to keep up. So different approach can be adopted. Performance-based, regulated sandboxes, adaptive, risk-weighted, collaborative. And EASA is moving about on this new approach. But we think that the regulatory sandbox approach could be, in this moment, a good solution to benefit about the problem of the pacing. So the possibility to test in real life environments, we think that could accelerate the implementation of the new technologies and could give a support for the regulator in order to elaborate the most adaptive regulation for each case. Our sky are changing, different means, different vehicles. A new era is coming, and integration is the key, but is the challenge too. This is, I show our initial working definition for advanced air mobility. And in this definition, we identify a set of intermodal, these are the key, intermodal transportation of goods and people, but not only, so we include air services too. So in a view to implement and to a new mobility, to enhance the quality of the life and a clear environmental too. Now EASA is introducing this new concept, this new description of the future of mobility, innovative air mobility and urban air mobility. We think that our initial approach is coherent with the new definition of EASA. The future of mobility. That's the challenge. We have a complex adaptive system. Many players, different players, not only aviation, many interconnections. We need a global management safety approach, multi-networks, and we need to take into account the necessity to accelerate and to regulate emergency technologies. Now, the question is, all of us are sure that can future air mobility respond to the needs of the society? We think that we can give. We talk with territories, with regions, with the cities, and we collect their needs, and sustainability, intermodals, and connectivity are their needs. In particular, emergency services, medical emergency services, and connecting remote areas are very sensible needs. This is our roadmap. We start in 2019, and our work is continuing. We start with signing the memorandum with our Minister of Innovation. And after, in this period, we have a roadmap we issue a roadmap, a strategic national plan, and a business plan. Most recently, we signed and we strict alliance with the territories and with the main aerodrome operators and ENAV, our service provider, in order to make a reality this mobility. Activation of regulatory sandbox are coming too. Our approach is in line with the European environment in terms of EU Sustainable Smart Mobility Communication and the EASA study of public acceptance, at last but not least, the work of EASA task force. This is the key our mobility enables. But we think that the most important is the public acceptance. This is our Italian vision and mission about our project. The vision is to create an Italian ecosystem in the view to have a multi-domains and intermodals and digital systems to connect territories. To announce the goals are to announce our national framework in accordance with the European framework, and very important to create a public-private ecosystem to funding. Starting from 40 applications, we identify 4 priorities: air taxi, goods, medical delivery, inspection mapping, agricultural support. And we identify 6 key topics. The most important are airspace design, infrastructure design, and community integration. We performed a specific gap analysis and identified technologies gap and regulation gaps. So now we have a roadmap, a strategic plan, a business plan. This is our path. It is split in 3 levels. The first level are demonstration controlled in a specific sandbox. Now, today, we are in a sandbox, in one of the first sandbox. And the intermediate advanced maturity level is focused on specific actor events, the Jubilee and the Winter Games in 2026. And we hope to can deliver the first large-scale commercial service into 2030. To accelerate, we need to stay in line with the European framework. And it's very important to have alliance with public and private organizations. And it's very important for founding public acceptance. That's the key. Recently, in order to, we activated the governance of our strategy plan, and we start immediately with a planning, a medium-term planning, in order to classify the actions to make them more quickly. We identify eight clusters. The first one, airspace design for integration, workflow automation for mission approval, cooperation from U-Space and ATM and very important. Consolidation of space services are very important, including infrastructure and planning. For planning, our view is to take into account in our PUMS, Urban Air Mobility Sustainability Plan, the network of the new mobility. It's very important for another step to accelerate it is an alliance with the territories and with the main actors, airports, operator, and ENAV. The driver, what the most important driver are? The drivers that are launching are a new airport national plan that included intermodality and sustainability principle, and urban air mobility infrastructure too in the main regions. Starting with a regional pilot project and starting with regulatory sandboxes in real-life environments. Another aspect very important is to see the new mobility as a services, not only as a product. Opportunity and expectation. Europe needs to act quickly to remain front runner. Maria, I agree perfectly with Maria. So we focus in Italy in order to give our contribute for European partners. We focus these two attractive events. We're moving with regulatory sandbox project, and we are elaborated INAC sandbox guidelines. Now, in conclusion, we established the first regulated sandbox Pianabella in the last April. This regulator is current with advanced mobility level 1 of our roadmap. The first challenges are to elaborate a national regulation for vertiports, starting from the EASA guidelines in order to give a national contribute to EASA 2 for the next regulation, and to validate our national sandbox guidelines. The second stage, we work with the ENAV for the main challenge, to design dedicated corridors, routes, and new air traffic rule with new services. That's the challenge. Thank you very much. We need a global regulatory approach. That's the key.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, because you have just mentioned the importance of the sandbox. We are working in coordination with you, with INAV, and with our partner, Leonardo, in order to accelerate the process, even under the point of view of a regulation. So in this flight test of this day, there is a lesson learned. And we have to define a gap analysis in order to decide what we have to make in the upcoming month. So, last but not least, we are going to talk about the airspace, introducing you Maurizio Pagetti as Chief Operating Officer since 2018 and Head of Air Navigation Service Director of Italian Air Navigation Service Provider since 2011, a big experience. So, Maurizio, the upcoming integrated air traffic management and use space services and capability is a big challenge for national advanced air mobility. What's the INAV perspective?
Okay, thank you for the meeting. It's quite challenging having a panel about regulatory after lunch, so it's very difficult. Here I'm let's say, an old guy from the ATM services, but at the same time, I'm part of the newcomers because I am the CEO of the flight, which is supposed to be the service provider for drones. So the question is, which level of service, what kind of service we have to provide to the newcomers? First of all, we have to consider one thing. The air traffic management, or the old air traffic control, we could say, is not designed to provide such a service. Starting from this point, we have to create another thing, something different that help us to manage and to include the newcomers in the airspace. This is the main challenge for us, for our Civil Aviation Authority, for the service provider, or for all the stakeholders involved in this process. Second step is important. We have to think in a different way for the level of service that we have to provide. For instance, the aeronautical information service should be the same, or we have to do something customized for the new customer. What kind of service in terms of meteorology, CNS? There's a lot of things that we have to explore all together as a system, but it's important that the target that we have to create something new, starting from the experience that we had as a national service provider, but at the same time thinking in a different way. So I took some notes, but it's important, for instance, at the same time harmonize the presence of the advanced air mobility and the drones together with the general aviation, with the, for instance, BAT, which is Buster Air Traffic, with HAMS, because they are all playing on the same playground. This is important because talking about the sandbox and the vertiport, which is, I think, the crucial part of this network, is important where and how to build the vertiport. It's important where, because it's important to harmonize the presence of the eVTOL with the previous general aviation, or old aviation, let's say, because we have to harmonize the procedure, the airspace configuration, the presence of the general aviation together with the eVTOL that have different needs. So when we talk about the positioning of the vertiport, we have considered the infrastructure as one thing, not only the concrete part of the field, also the airspace together. Well, that's why we support ENAC, Aeroporti di Roma, the other stakeholder, to detect the good place where to put the vertiport, because it's crucial. The other thing that Carmela said about the corridors. Corridors are important because they're supposed to overfly or to be part of the airspace over crowded city. So we have to manage and to guarantee a safe, secure, sustainable flight of the advanced air mobility, the eVTOL. So it's important also to have a common strategy. What we have done today, I think it's the starting point, very, very challenging to achieve the goal to start the operation at the end of 2024. We have a lot to work to do because we have to adapt also the rules of the, let's say, organization of the airspace in order to accept the newcomers. This is crucial for us because we have to, let's say, change or adapt the regulation considering that the flying object that we are considering now, eVTOL, drones, or whatever, needs other things. Not what we are providing now, but something new. So it's important to work together, giving to our regulator our know-how, and together with the industry, find the right way to accommodate the traffic. We know exactly that we have a vision. All the system has a vision. We have to act now. It's important to act together, to find the solution. The panel before, they said they asked one question in a separate way to different stakeholders, and they had two answers. We should work together, giving the same answer, the common answer to the same question. That's important because My approach as a service provider could be different, but I can modify my approach in order to accommodate new requests, new things to, let's say, to evolve and to contribute to the evolution of the urban air mobility, which is crucial in order to reduce the, let's say, the pollution of the congested city and to evolve in a very sustainable way for the rest of the transport. This is our idea. We are able and we are, let's say, we intend to support any initiative, but it's important for us to have a common goal and a common strategy. So this is an occasion. I think it's important to have this kind of meeting because it helps to show to the rest of the world, for instance, that Italy is ready to face this kind of challenge. That's all.
Thank you very much, Maurizio. Sure, the problem is the balance between, a word that for us is very important, safety of the operation, on one side, and the other side, the sustainability of business and the protection on the environment and the social acceptance. So it's a big challenge. But if I have a few minutes talking about what you have just mentioned, what my panelists thinks that how the technology, the innovation, especially in 2022, can help us to accelerate this challenge and this problem concerning the integration between air transport and new advanced air mobility. Maria?
Hello.
Hello.
So how innovation can help us? Actually, innovation in all these newcomers, new entrants, and I think Carmela has a very nice picture, which I probably asked you to, if I could use in some other presentations, Carmela, because indeed, innovation regulations are not really the same, and they seem to be antonymous. But in this case, innovation and the piece of innovation is pushing all of us to think out of the box, to think quickly, to try to find solutions. So it pushes us also to conclude together in common goals and in common solutions. And we believe that we may even resolve issues that we were not able to resolve in the past for reasons that it was like, well, it was done like that. It was in the regulation like that for many years, but nobody knew exactly if it was needed for safety or not. So innovation is pushing us. Obviously, we need to think out of the box because maybe the tool and techniques that we are today having on our plate for safety assessment, for measuring assurance and for guaranteed that what the things are done in a safe and secure manner. So we may need to find new approaches to deal with innovation, but I am very privileged and I feel very happy to be part of this era of aviation because I think this era of aviation is, in my opinion, pushing Europe to work really together from the start. So it's not trying to work each country by each country and then trying to harmonize at the end. So we're really working from the very beginning together in Europe to try to go towards the same goals and respect, obviously, the local specificities. That is important, and the local cultures. But I think innovation, when we think about today, the history of internet, I mean, we don't do internet in Italy different than what we do in Spain or in Germany. So we do it in the same way. And I think when we think on urban and mobility in 10 years from now, I believe we will do it in the same way in the whole of Europe. So innovation is helping us, it's challenging us, because we don't have those tools and techniques that we need to ensure safety in the same manner that we have done until now. So we need to innovate there as well for certification, for safety assurance, assessments, approval. So we need to work pretty hard on this part, but it's helping us to be together and to achieve common goals from day number one.
Thank you very much, Maria. Something to add?
I think that, I don't know, okay. I think it's very important, the pacing. So the pace is very important. So I think that industry and technologies in particular need to have a stable and harmonized framework, regulation framework. Because I agree with Maria, we need to grow together in Europe at the same time. So we have to facilitate the first runners in order to advantage all European system. This is very important. There is not the first one and the last one. There is Europe as the first, and so we have to work together, regulate European at EU level and national level, in order to enable European industry to be first runner. This is very important. So we have to work together with EASA, with the other national authorities that are working about this new future mobility. And we are collect results, we are analyze together results in order to issue a current framework. And for this, it's very important a new approach. And we think that at the moment for innovation, regulatory sandboxes is the right approach.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, nothing to add, just to say innovation could help us. Yes, of course. On the other hand, I think we should have a strategy where to put the innovation. So it's important to understand where we want to go and to have the, let's say, innovation to help us to reach the goal. Simple, but at the same time, it's quite complex. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our panelists. See you, Maria.
Let's see if my perfect night works. Hello, everyone. Last panel of the day, and we're going to make sure it's a sweet and crisp panel. And the topic is quite interesting. My name is Nick. I'm with Plug and Play. We are one of the most active venture capital investors headquartered in Silicon Valley. We've been around for quite some while. We were the first investors in Google, PayPal, and now invest in about 300 startups per year. So I'm not directly from the industry, from the aviation industry, but we work together with a lot of big corporates globally across 18 different industries, and the aviation and travel industry is one of them. So we work together with ADR, we work together with a bunch of airlines, and we not only invest together in startups, but we also connect these two worlds together. And I have the comfortable situation now to ask very simple, direct questions about the impact of urban air mobility, advanced air mobility, and exploring wider perspectives. For me, this means we're going to talk about the people, the communities. We're going to talk about how to raise social acceptance. And in the end, I have a question about venture capital as well, because I can't help myself. But for now, I would like to introduce my panel for today.
which I'm very excited to talk to about this topic today. So first of all, please give a round of applause for Mr. Ivan Bassato, Chief Aviation Officer of ADR. Ivan, please take a seat here. Next up is Professor Maria Claudia Pinater, Managing Director of Venezia. We have to practice this. I'm very sorry, Maria Claudia. The pronunciation, yeah. My last name is Italian, but I can't speak a single word Italian, so I'm very sorry for that. Then next up on stage, please welcome, with a big round of applause, Professor Paolo Gaudenzi from Sapienza University. Paolo, welcome.
Thank you.
And then we are joined all the way from Milan, I think, by Professor Fabrizio Zerbini from Bocconi University. Fabrizio, it's great having you with us. Hello.
Good afternoon.
All right, so I'm gonna sit over there, a little bit far away from you guys. But before we kick off, I would like to quickly have a quick round of introductions. 1 or 2 sentences about what you do and what you focus on so that we know why we're here and talking about the wider ecosystem and about urban air mobility. So maybe if I can start with you, Paolo, quick introduction.
Okay, so good afternoon. I'm Paolo Gaudenzi. I'm the head of the Mechanical and Aerospace Department of the University of Rome La Sapienza. At La Sapienza, we started studies in aeronautical engineering in 1926. So we are 4 years away from our centennial, but we are still on the stage. We have 1,500 of students in aerospace engineering. And as all the most important universities around the world, we work on 3 pillars. That is research, education, and innovation. Basically, what education is, everybody can understand. What research is, sometimes is hidden behind the mind of professors, but actually is addressing the need of the development for knowledge and new solutions in terms of technology. What does means innovation? Innovation means that universities now are embedded in societal environment. So provide, if possible, solutions that are ready to be used in the environment. Mm-hmm. Just 2 things. In research and education, what we are doing in terms, let's say, in innovation. We are innovating the way we train our students. It's a couple of years that in the master in aeronautical engineering, we have introduced a curriculum, a special specialization inside the studies in civil aviation. And this was done jointly with Aeroporti di Roma, ENAC, professionals that comes from the real life experience of industry and become our professors to have our students trained in real needs in terms of professional capacity and in the real needs from the market environment. Another point that I would like to raise is that our government, inside the National Plan for Resilience, has put a significant amount of budget in research activities. And the Ministry of Research has launched, among others, one initiative that is the National Center for Innovative Mobility. The funding is not trivial, it's 500 million euros. And Sapienza is participating in this big initiative exactly in the area of air and urban mobility. So we are really, let's say, on the stage.
Thank you, Paolo. Maria Claudia, 1 or 2 sentences about yourself and what you do.
My name is Maria Claudia Pignazzi. I'm the Managing Director of an ecosystem of innovation and sustainability based in Venice. It belongs to the Ca' Foscari University of Venice, and actually we deal with co-innovation programs with corporations. Atlantia with Aeroporti di Roma is one of our partners, and we not only scout and receive applications from startups all over the world. Last round, we collected almost 4,000 candidates from 63 countries, but we help corporations to develop POCs and pilots. So actually the main aim is to benefit the city of Venice, which is in strong need for innovation and sustainability in the way it has to survive all recent damages. But we hope and we are longing to help the country to find its role in Europe, as one of the previous panelists said. So there is a chance for Italy to be the flag for innovation. And this innovation is cross-sectorial, not only deals with mobility itself, it's a matter of smart cities and advanced social systems as well. So yes, the attention has to be to these kind of cities like Venice and like Rome is, with such a long history, and they deserve to survive at the same time they lived up to now. And we didn't gain such a very high fund from Europe, but actually we developed another vertical of innovation at Ca' Foscari dealing with future farming, which does not deal with mobility, but actually it's a way to build infrastructures for cities to innovate themselves together with society, and it deals with microbiology and synthetic biology, which actually there is a kind of connection with mobility when we speak of biofuels, but this is another story. So thank you, Nick.
Thank you. Yeah, and we're going to talk about the cities of tomorrow in a bit, but even we saw you today as you have two different hats on today's event. First, as the chairman of UrbanV, but your second hat is also related to ADR. Please, a quick introduction.
Thank you, Nick. Good afternoon, everybody. So first of all, I don't wear always leather jackets. Okay.
Unfortunately, I think they're super cool though.
Not as many times as I wish. So most of the times I wear suits, and happy to be with you today to discuss about these very important issues for our plans and for many other stakeholders that are represented here, and the work that we have to develop in the next future. Secondly, I had to say that we better save some time, and no need to introduce myself too much because we discussed and we introduced with the events this morning. We better save some time for really deep dive into the things that will make or will not make the social acceptance of this new technology in the future. Professor Gaudenzi, very happy that we are approaching the 100-year anniversary of the Aeronautical Engineering Faculty of La Sapienza. We need to start celebrating this properly together. Another good reason to take urban air mobility and bringing urban air mobility to Rome. We missed this reason, but we will add it to the list. There is a long list of things that make the case of urban air mobility in Rome very viable. Very much look forward to the discussion this panel.
Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. And Fabrizio, over to you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me fluently?
We can hear you perfectly.
Lovely. So Fabrizio Zerbini, marketing professor from SDA Bocconi School of Management, Bocconi University, and scientific director of the lab Mobius on future mobility we recently developed together with Atlantia. The focus is on future mobility, younger generation. This is what we use as an angle to look at future mobility. And I'm pleased to be with you.
Thank you so much, Fabrizio. Thank you very much for dialing in. Unfortunately, you can't be here with us in person today. But since I said already, I'm not directly from the industry. So we heard a lot about opportunities and the technical requirements and capabilities of eVTOLs and basically what this technology holds. But I would like now to talk about partnerships, ecosystems, but also the people and the communities that it affects them. So my first question would be to you, Maria Claudia. You talked about, Venice, it's a very old city, a lot of heritage. How do you imagine the city of tomorrow? How will it look like? And also how will people perceive mobility in the years to come as well?
Venice is quite, well developed from the smart cities point of view. I mean, we do not have cars, so actually it seems that we are very well doing. We're doing great. But it seems, on the other hand, that water and air are the natural prosecutions of evolution and innovation when speaking of mobility. So we are studying in Venice ways to develop electric mobility on water, but it sounds as well that air can be a place where vehicles can try and develop alternatives to mobility. So there are two things to be said, and I'm happy to be in Rome to stress this point, because we usually think about cities as hardwares. I mean, like the urbs romana, so the hardware, the infrastructures, but a city is not only this. A city is a software as well. It's public space, it's the areas where people exchange, move, and live. And this deals with the onboarding of public opinion, the onboarding of people which are not only workers, but children, students, tourists as well. So every category needs to feel like part of the mobility innovation. And in Venetia, we not only work on technology, but we work on the human side of things and innovation and strategies. And as we see, yes, there are PPP, so public-private partnerships, but there should be another P, which is participation of all the categories, human categories, taking part into this evolution. And that's why we focus not only on technology, but on social issues. And we are trying to develop showrooms in addition to labs to help people be trained, educate, and understand the paradigm we are moving from. We are actually living an era of something really astonishing, and I don't think our children, but even our nephews will see and understand the value of all of this. So speaking of the urbs, there is that sense of civitas that we have to be aware of, and we need to connect all the people living in a city. I mean, we should jump from a sort of Manichaean split with cities on one side and suburbs on the other side, and see areas, urban areas, as polycentric areas. And that could be the great innovation that Italy could bring with experiments like Urban V, because the country, I mean, has an history of innovation. It has meanings on the inside. It can help people understand what's going on. And if we imagine Italy like a test area for innovation, we can try and be like a new smart area in Europe. We do not have to innovate just the polis, I mean, the center, the big city. But the big city needs to be the propeller for innovation for all the area around.
That sounds good. So also we're going to rethink cities in general a little bit more. Fabrizio, what's your take on it? How do you imagine, the city of tomorrow, and how does mobility fit into all of this?
Interesting question. Well, it depends also on when we settle the bar for tomorrow, right? Let me think ahead for a second, and let's think 2050, right? If we need to think about future mobility. We know that we are going to have 70% of people living in urban areas, point one. We know that the population is going to grow from 8 billion to 9.7 billion. So if we project things in something something more than 25 years, we are going to have something less than 50% growth of population into cities. Mm-hmm. So if they are not a very nice place to live today, it's going to be probably worse tomorrow. How to deal with that? We will need much more smart working, some interesting ideas about smart living, less commuting, and probably more mobility on demand, right? More passengers also in multitask mode during their routine transportation, without the need to think about their mobility, because a smart solution will do the job for them. That's what I see, right? So we really need to innovate, and these demands for significant change by policymakers, local policymakers, citizens, and also corporations, in my view.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So it's not just that people are moving into the cities or moving out of the cities again, but it's also about the new ways of how we work, how we interact with our peers, which is obviously changing. And Ivan, how do you think, like now going to eVTOLs, urban mobility, how do you think this topic will integrate into the city of tomorrow, and what kind of audience are we targeting first, and where do we want to end up? Is it going to be a mass transportation system for people within cities, or will it also connect different communities that are a little bit outside of the city maybe? Will this help us to be even more connected, or is it just a commuting tool within a city?
Well, at the beginning, it will not be a very fast growth, right? So we will have the first test cases, first pilots, first commercial operations. So it will be a phased introduction of this technology in our cities. I think we need to stop the narrative of Blade Runner. We need to stop the narrative of swarms of drones buzzing around our skies. So it's not 0 to 500 knots in a matter of a day. It is low growth. It's something that has to harmonize in the existing ecosystem. So if we do not stop this narrative, we will worry people. Okay, we will create not the good conditions and not the good preconditions for having this technology accepted by passengers, by customers, by clients, but also from the society, by the society side. Societal acceptance, as we said before. At the beginning will be urban, because technical capabilities are quite limited at this stage. Okay, they will be developed, not in many years, just in a few years. It will be urban, short flights, will be more on the experience side rather than we are actually satisfying the needs of mobility on a metropolitan or a regional scale. Afterwards, we will have more range, we will have more autonomy, we will have more energy that we can manage, and this mobility will integrate more nicely in the existing transportation modalities. I think the potential for serving a vast array of mobility needs, is there. The potential is there. We just need not to accelerate too much, as it was also discussed this morning, to do it in a wise way. Okay? We don't have to go to people and say, guys, we have attack ships on fire off the shoulders of Orion. I love Blade Runner, okay? But there are no attack ships on fire, okay? We will have air corridors that will be very much controlled. We will have air corridors that will not have hundreds and thousands of drones in an hour, okay? There is a very important study by EASA, which I consider a starting point for debating and also acting and also taking action for more and more socially accepted air mobility. That is the EASA study on social acceptance of urban air mobility in Europe. It was published the last years. And a lot is already there. Okay, the things that we have to avoid, the errors that we need to avoid, and the things that we will make this mobility more appreciated and more harmonized with the existing ecosystem of urban air mobility. We can speak more about that if we have time, but basically I invite everybody to look in that study, in that report, because it is a clear roadmap. I mean, EASA did a good job. It is a clear roadmap based on the scientific evidence, on how we can integrate in a smooth manner, in a feasible manner, air mobility in our cities.
You just touched upon also, kind of like taking the fear away from people that we're going to have a buzzing sky, and there are some daunting pictures sometimes being portrayed by the media. How do you think that communication and building the right partnerships helps in increasing social acceptance?
You're asking me?
Yes, I'm asking you again.
Okay. It's a key thing. okay? Going back to that study, it is clear that the initial reaction of people, European Union citizens, different regions, different countries actually participated to this survey. The initial reaction is positive, okay?
Yeah.
People appreciate the fact that this is a more sustainable form of aviation, so no emissions, limited noise. They appreciate the fact that the urban air mobility in a city like Rome with a very congested ground transportation systems can introduce significant benefits for everyday life of people. But then it's very important, we need to be very cautious on that, and that's where my caution, our caution of ADR Urban V comes from. If you ask people, are you going to use this mobility as this flying taxi as a first mover? Will you feel safe? Okay. Do you think that this new type of aviation will meet the required security standards? Are you afraid that with an eVTOL somebody can do harmful things to people? Okay. Are you okay with the level of noise that we will take to your garden, to your square? I mean, we are Italy. We are the country of piazzas, no? Okay, squares where people spend a significant time of their life. Will you accept this new guest in your living environment? People start changing their attitude if they ask with such questions. So we need to be very reassuring that we are not damaging the quality of life, the existing quality of life of our communities while introducing benefits in terms of new transportation options. Okay? And scientific evidence proving that these vehicles, this technology, is definitely better than what we have available right now, that they can integrate nicely in the train systems, in the legacy aviation system, proving these things can be done only through effective communication. And this is our responsibility as an industry if we want to untap this huge potential that we see out there.
Maria Claudia, how can we best communicate this?
It's a matter of the number of players involved in the ecosystem. We are used to study in Venice deep tech ecosystems, which actually are made up of a great number of players blended in relations, but the main point is that there is not a single orchestrator. So every player of the ecosystem has the chance to speak of the innovation and tell, the benefits or not that everybody gains when an innovation is developed. So the matter of deep tech ecosystems is switching from a money, let's say, benefit environment to a new number of tools to exchange value in a community. And communication deals with this. We're not exchanging money and investments only, but information, contacts, relations, and to the benefit of future generations still studying and not yet in the job marketplace. So actually, dissemination and communication deals with this. New players with not a single orchestrator, not a ruler, but everybody being part of this and able to give a part of value.
Polo, Maria Claudia just mentioned, education, new job market, and so on. And we've heard in a previous panel, that we're now focusing on building the infrastructure. But in the years to come, we will have to employ a lot of more people in this field to make this whole value chain work. We need maintenance, we need pilots, we need a lot of people. So in your opinion, what kind of skill set does the new generation need in order to work in urban air mobility and advanced air mobility? And also, how does it help us in accelerating the adoption of it?
Quite a difficult question, but I would like to come
Let's
back.
See if we have a simple answer for it.
To come back to the experience of this morning, because it was really a nice experience participating to this flight test. And we saw a wonderful machine, a wonderful eVTOL machine, but there were two machines flying, because actually there was a drone flying along with the machine. And then there was the Vertiport. And there should be somewhere some traffic control that set the regulation and allow the test to be done inside an airport hub like this. So the point is, this is a very complex thing. And complexity means a lot of competencies that are needed to create all the parts of this complex picture. So, what to do in terms of education? First of all, understand that there are many different experiences are needed, and still you need specialization. Okay, you still need to go deep into flight mechanics or fluid dynamics or telecoms and so on. But then you need to have some synthetic view to have those things put together. And this is not enough, because you should be able to innovate. So it's a third even approach, and to be innovator, you have to be creative. And so you have to understand all that since the design, going through manufacture, testing, and then operation. So what is the recipe? Keep the specialization, give a system view, but then also give the opportunity to students to practice this in developing prototypes. If you come to our university, come to our courses in mechanical and aerospace engineering, you will be able to build cars, build rockets, build satellites, build aerial vehicles. Then after designing them, constructing them, you still operate them. We have teams of students operating 3 sets of satellites that are actually flying now around the world with some interesting experience and research going on. So this mixture of all good research deep in a certain area, synthetic view, and experience in practice, the creation of new systems in all their complexity, hardware, software, man in the loop, and be able to have an experience during your studies of operating them, I think this is the recipe. At least this is the recipe that we are following at the Department of Aerospace and Mechanical Engineering in Sapienza.
Fabrizio, is it the same recipe that you guys follow?
Well, I don't know, but if you want, the point I'd like to phrase out here is what has been said before, right? We talk a lot about this as an innovation, which is a breakthrough innovation. And if it is a breakthrough innovation, we also need to understand, and we need all the different actors of the system, like in a network, to work together. We need to understand that we cannot go faster than the orchestra with the music, right? What does it mean? It means that for every breakthrough innovation, if we observe the whole market, like we said before, we ask the average people, would you adopt it? Would you buy it? And they tell you, I'm risk averse. That's normal, because it happens like more tell us, right? At the beginning, we have innovators, and these innovators are willing to pay the premium price. They demand a lot, but they are also willing to take the risk. That's the initial target. Then the market will change, they will be adapted to the innovation, they will see people flying, and then we can target the majority, right? And we will need a different value proposition. And then we will have the laggards later on demanding a convenience and low price point. So if you want the recipe I would propose here is to take it with calm, by phases, changing the offering over time, but also understanding that the scale-up will demand time, because at the beginning we will have to focus on the market niche, and this will be a very specific type of people.
Okay. Thank you very much. I said it's going to be a crisp and sweet panel, so I have one more question for everyone here in the room. Maybe this could be like a quick fire round. I mean, you can also explain why. So, as I said before, I'm from a venture capital fund. So I like investing in startups. We like this. We do this every day. And it's not often that we have so many experts from an industry in one room. So I have a question to my panel. And the question is, in what area of the whole value chain that we now described, right? In the whole value chain that we talked about, it's the entire day-to-day. Where do you see, or where would you increase venture capital spending or investments? If you have an unlimited amount of money, where would you put your money in terms of venture capital investments? Ivan.
Yeah, interesting question. Initial reaction, initial thought of mine is almost everywhere, because this is so new that really there are many options. But
which area needs it the most?
Yeah, let's try to make it more narrower, and then focus the attention on an area. Well, if we go back to the test flight of this morning and yesterday morning, we saw that we have a vehicle that is under development, quite well developed. It is flying, and the next generation is also in the certification process. Then we have a Vertiport that is a physical entity. So and these things were done by companies that were already on the market, right? Not by startups. So Volocopter was a startup about many years ago. Okay, now it's rather scaled up. There is a component of this industry that at this stage is by far less mature. And it is the component that will ensure a safe management of the complexity that Professor Gaudenzi was talking about. Caring and managing this thin layer of airspace, which nowadays is not used at all for commercial applications, the lower airspace. We require systems and procedures and setups that we do not have. Right now, we do not have the recipe, and I think we need to develop those recipes, we need to develop those models. Of course, incumbent players in the industry can do that, but I see that there is room there's a large room for innovators and for startups that are going to propose more simple, maybe systems to ensure this objective, the achievement of these objectives, that is of paramount importance. Because at the end, it's the safety warranty that we are going to deliver to passengers. Okay, so that's an important area. It's less untapped than others, where ourselves and other players can do the job more easily.
I know it's a tricky question. I mean, there's so much, as you said, there's so much room for investment as well. Yeah. But managing the airspace for eVTOLs, basically, and developing software that can do that, that's where you would put the money.
It's an airspace that cannot be managed with the existing models, right? Yeah. So we need to innovate. And over there, maybe it's important to have some startups, some fresh thinking, and then to have the expertise of the air navigation service providers that do the job in an excellent way with existing aviation.
Okay. Maria Claudia, would you invest in the same area?
Speaking of aviation, I would invest in biofuels, everything related with biology, but it's a long way to go. So if we have to give very fast answers to the market, actually I would invest in electrification, which is a fast and very useful and well-working answer to the need of zero emissions we have. So when you ask that, I was thinking about new generations pushing into families to make sustainable buyings. I mean, the decisions in a family are depending, I think, from few months on what new generations ask. So if we have to say something to them, they have to reach, they have to see us reach a goal between 2030, and of course that's electrification. But if we have a longer view, well, it would be biofuels.
Okay, so two very interesting areas to invest in: urban mobility, Polo. Where would you put your money in the value chain? I know we want to put it everywhere.
To me, it's very simple to address this question. You should invest in my startup that is dealing with monitoring of the fragile infrastructural system that we have all around Italy, and the fragility of our infrastructures, the fragility of our ground, bring me the attention of another application of this aerial short-range mobility, not just transport people, but transport instruments to play something with these instruments, for instance, in terms of observation. And what you need to observe, this can be discussed.
Okay.
But this would be a great add-on to aerial short-range vehicles and systems like the one that we have seen today.
Yeah. So startups are a really important part in this whole in the whole value chain. Fabrizio, which startup or which industry would you float a term sheet to?
Well, no doubts about that. I just come from another workshop where we discussed about smart cities and future mobility in smart cities, and the leitmotif was it's going to be not a battle for technologies, but a battle for space. Space will be scarce, so I would for sure invest in the places where I want these flights to land and to start from. So vertical airports, basically.
Okay. You'd like to hear that, right? I hope everyone took notes. I did, in my mind. Thank you so much for joining me on this panel today. Thank you very much for all your insights, and also for your explanations on how to raise, social acceptance. And also where you would put your money. So thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you to our panelists. So it's a wrap. It's time to call it a day. It's been a long day. It's been an intense day. Thanks to every single one of you for bearing with us throughout all of it. I usually don't like very emphatic remarks, but I think that with the due proportion, we can say that today we have witnessed history. We have seen, an eVTOL, a manned eVTOL fly for the first time in Italy, fly for the first time in Europe next to a working, operating, very busy commercial airport hub. So we have witnessed history. Thank you, thanks all of you. Thanks to all the people again who've made it possible. Thanks to all the people who worked behind the scenes. Thanks to all our partners. And please stay tuned. This is not the end, obviously. This is just the beginning. There's much more to come. We're just at the beginning of a new industry. We're just at the beginning of the exciting work that we're carrying as Urban V together with all our partners. So stay tuned for more exciting moments and news to come. Thank you.